The message from my mother came through at 11:27 p.m. The screen flashed once, illuminating the dark apartment. We changed all the locks. "You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now." For a moment, I just stared at it. The words didn't even seem real. My thumb hovered above the screen as if it might burn me if I touched it. I read it once, then twice, then a third time until each word etched itself into my brain like ice-carving stone. I expected tears, maybe anger, maybe fear. But what came instead was something quieter, colder, clarity. I didn't type a reply. I didn't call. I didn't break down. I smiled. Because the truth none of them seemed to understand was that home wasn't a building. It wasn't theirs to take. And what happened next would rip apart the comfortable empire they'd built on greed, lies, and my obedience. I didn't regret a single second of it. If you've ever been used, drained, and discarded by your own family, the people who should have protected you, then you already know the flavor of this kind of betrayal. Hit that subscribe button of your soul because this story isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about justice delivered with paperwork and precision. It's about what happens when family greed meets legal strategy and loses. My name is Jessica Chen. I'm 28, a data-minded numbers nerd with a memory built for details, which turned out to be both my curse and my salvation. I grew up in a tidy 2-story colonial in Portland, Oregon, with white shutters on the windows and a maple tree that dropped red leaves every autumn. From the outside, anyone would have called us the perfect family. Inside those walls, perfection was a performance, and I was the stagehand keeping the show running. The exploitation started innocent enough, or what passes for innocent when you're too young to see patterns. I was 14 when my father started giving orders instead of requests. "Jessica, grab the ladder. We're fixing the gutters." Or, "Jessica, come hold the flashlight." Weekends disappeared into sawdust and sweat. While other girls experimented with makeup and gossip, I was sanding fences and climbing onto roofs. My palms were a patchwork of cuts from handling tools too heavy for my age. My back ached constantly, but every complaint earned the same rehearsed response. "You're tougher than any son I could have asked for," Dad would say with a laugh. Roughing my hair like that erased the exhaustion. Mom would nod in approval. "Family helps family, Jessica. You're so handy." Amanda's delicate. Delicate. That was the family code for preferred. Amanda, my younger sister, was always the orchid in the sunlight, while I was the root holding the flower up through the dirt. I believed their stories, that manual labor built character, that this was love dressed as discipline. By 17, I was so indoctrinated that saying no felt the same as being cruel. Then the money favors began. Subtle at first. "Things are tight," Mom would sigh. "Could you help with the electric bill?" She said it as if she were asking me to pass the salt at dinner. Later came the mortgage payments, the unexpected expenses, the gentle manipulations that made me feel proud to fix problems that weren't mine. By 21, I realized my parents hadn't just accepted my help, they depended on it. I was the invisible income stream funding their illusion of stability, while they quietly saved every spare cent for Amanda's future. When I asked about vacations or small luxuries, I was told, those aren't priorities right now. Meanwhile, Amanda got a brand new car at 16, tuition paid in full for a private college, and an all-expenses-paid trip to Italy to study art. Worked 12-hour shifts balancing customer spreadsheets, while eating instant noodles at my desk, but love has a way of disguising itself as logic when you've been trained to accept crumbs. I told myself it was fair because I was the strong one, the responsible one. Being the dependable daughter made me feel important. Then, about a year ago, that illusion cracked. I noticed small things first. Whispers that stopped when I entered the room. Family, future planning chats where my name never came up. My gut told me something was off, but I couldn't prove it, until that night in March. I came home late from my accounting job, shoulders heavy from tax season fatigue, when I heard voices in the kitchen. I almost breezed past until I caught my name, so I froze and listened. "The deed is in our names only," Mom said softly. "Jessica doesn't realize all her help was voluntary. She won't get anything when we sell." Dad chuckled, a deep, nasty sound that didn't belong in the man I'd once trusted. "She's never asked for paperwork," Classic Jessica. All heart, no business sense. Then came Amanda's voice, hesitant but curious.
But won't she expect something?
Mom snorted. Expect what? She gave gifts. Gifts don't buy ownership. I gripped the wall until my knuckles went white. They were planning to sell the house, the one I painted, maintained, financed, and cut me out entirely. My own family, scheming like mobsters dividing stolen goods. I didn't cry. I didn't confront them. Instead, I walked to my room, opened my laptop, and began to quietly build the case that would end them. For the next 6 months, I lived 2 lives. By day, mild-mannered accountant. By night, document hunter. Every receipt, every email, every digital transfer, they all became puzzle pieces in a legal blueprint. Dad's arrogance was my secret ally. He never kept clean books. He'd send me quick transfers from my account to his with vague notes like help or temporary. I cataloged everything. $47,000 in mortgage contributions, $23,000 in renovation supplies, $15,000 more in utilities I'd covered when they claimed financial strain, $85,000, all neatly traced back to me. Add to that 13 years of unpaid labor, painting siding, replacing shingles, fixing drainage systems that any contractor would have charged tens of thousands for. I built spreadsheets so detailed even the IRS would have applauded. Once my evidence mountain was complete, I met quietly with 3 separate attorneys to confirm what my instincts already knew. Legally, I had a claim. A strong one. My name might not have been on the deed, but equity isn't always written in ink. It's written in proof, blood, sweat, and bank records. So I waited. When the message arrived that night in September, we changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. It didn't break me. It completed the picture. That smug haha at the end was the final nail in their narrative of cruelty. It proved intent. It made their motives crystal clear. They thought they were shutting me out. What they'd actually done was hand me the last puzzle piece I needed to burn their little empire to ash. And this time, legally, I slept better that night than I had in months. At 7 sharp the next morning, I walked into work with a coffee in one hand and the phone in the other. My attorney answered on the second ring. Jessica, good morning. I smiled, eyes on the sunrise slicing through the office blinds. File the petition, I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline roaring through my veins. He didn't need clarification. We'd been preparing for this moment for months. 2 days later, my parents' attorney called my phone in what I can only describe as a panic. Miss Chen, we have a serious problem here. We need to discuss this immediately. Of course, they had a problem. Their iron cage of control had cracks, and I'd just widened them into a complete fracture. But I didn't call back right away. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to realize that the daughter they'd been using and dismissing for years had grown into a woman who understood exactly how power worked. The confrontation came the following week in a sterile mediation conference room downtown. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving clarity. A long table dominated the space with my legal team on one side and theirs on the other. They walked in first, my father red-faced and blustering, my mother trying to maintain her usual air of superiority, and Amanda looking confused and slightly terrified. For the first time in months, I was in the same room with all 3 of them, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no residual love, just cold professional focus. I didn't make eye contact with any of them. Instead, I placed a thick manila folder on Unforgettable and slid it toward the center. What's this? My father demanded, his voice carrying that familiar tone of dismissive authority. My attorney opened the folder with deliberate precision. Documentation of my client's financial contributions to the property in question, as well as evidence of labor and materials provided over a 14-year period. Inside were copies of every bank statement, every receipt, every financial record I'd meticulously gathered. Bank transfers totaling $47,000 toward mortgage payments, receipts for $23,000 in home improvements and repairs, utility payments during their supposed financial emergencies, contractor invoices for work I'd funded when they claimed they couldn't afford necessary repairs. But the most damning evidence was a series of text messages and emails where they'd explicitly requested my financial help, promising it was temporary and that they'd make it up to him once their situation improved. My father flipped through the pages, his confident smirk collapsing with each turn. My mother tried to interrupt several times, but her voice kept catching in her throat as the scope of the documentation became clear. Amanda just sat there, her eyes darting between the papers and our parents' faces, finally realizing she wasn't the beloved daughter in a happy family. She was a beneficiary in a calculated scheme to exploit her sister. "This is ridiculous," my father finally sputtered. "Those were gifts, family helping family. Jessica never asked for any kind of formal arrangement." My attorney's response was calm and precise. "Mr. Chen, these documents show a pattern of solicited contributions made under their presentation that they were temporary assistance during financial hardship. My client has evidence that you and your wife deliberately concealed your true financial situation while accepting these payments." He pulled out another set of documents, bank statements I'd subpoenaed, showing my parents' actual financial position during the periods when they'd claimed to need my help. They'd had substantial savings accounts and investment portfolios the entire time. Furthermore, my attorney continued, "The text message your wife sent to my client explicitly, threatening to make her homeless demonstrates malicious intent to deprive her of the benefits of her contributions." The silence in that room was suffocating. I watched my parents' faces as the reality of their situation sank in. That house, their fortress, their kingdom, their weapon against me was slipping from their control. My mother tried to speak first, her voice shaky and desperate. "Jessica, honey, this is all a misunderstanding. You never meant for me to document everything," I interrupted, speaking directly to her for the first time since entering the room. "You never meant for me to understand property law. You never meant for me to realize I'd been subsidizing your lifestyle for years while you saved your own money for Amanda's future." My father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "After everything we did for you, after raising you, housing you, feeding you, after using me as unpaid labor for 14 years, I cut him off. After taking $85,000, 0 cents of my money under false pretenses. After planning to sell the house, I helped build and maintain it without giving me a cent of the proceeds." My attorney laid out our demands with surgical precision. "My client isn't seeking repayment of her contributions. She's seeking her rightful ownership stake in the property based on those contributions. Given the documented evidence of financial investment and labor, we're requesting a 50% ownership interest." The room exploded. My father started shouting about ungrateful children and legal extortion. My mother burst into tears, wailing about family loyalty and how I was destroying everything. Amanda just sat there in shocked silence, probably calculating how much her inheritance had just shrunk. But I remained calm, focused. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, and their emotional manipulations couldn't touch me anymore. When the judge signed the court order 6 weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse holding the official documents that gave me legal ownership of 50% of the property, not because my family had generously decided to include me, but because the law had recognized what they tried to deny. I'd earned my stake in that house through years of financial contributions and labor. The first thing I did wasn't move back into the house. That place was poisoned by too many memories, too many years of manipulation and exploitation. Besides, they'd changed the locks. Remember, they'd made it clear I wasn't welcome there. Instead, I forced the sale of the property. As a 50% owner, I had the legal right to demand liquidation if I couldn't reach an agreement with the other owners about the property's use, and since my parents had made it abundantly clear they didn't want to live with me and I had no desire to live with them, sale was the only logical option. The house sold for $680,000, significantly more than they'd probably expected thanks to all the improvements I'd funded over the years. My share came to $340,000 minus legal fees and taxes. But here's the beautiful part. My parents had been counting on that house sale to fund their retirement. They'd planned to pocket the entire $680,000, use some of it to buy a smaller place, and invest the rest for their golden years. Instead, they walked away with $340,000 before their own legal fees and taxes, barely enough to buy a modest condo in a less desirable neighborhood. Their dreams of a comfortable, wealthy retirement evaporated overnight. With my share of the proceeds, I bought a beautiful townhouse in a quiet neighborhood across town. It's smaller than the family house, but it's completely mine. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every improvement is my choice and my responsibility. They still try to contact me sometimes. My father sends emails full of guilt trips. "After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us." My mother leaves voicemails dripping with false remorse. "The family is supposed to forgive Jessica. You're going to regret this when we're gone." Amanda has tried to play mediator, suggesting family therapy and claiming she never knew about their plans to exclude me, but she was sitting at that kitchen table, discussing how to cut me out of the proceeds. She knew exactly what was happening. I don't respond to any of them. I've blocked their numbers, filtered their emails, and moved on with my life. Because the truth is, when they changed those locks and sent me that cruel message, they thought they were taking my security and my future. What they actually did was hand me the evidence I needed to claim what was rightfully mine. They wanted to make me homeless. Instead, they lost their own home and their retirement security. And now, when I sit in my living room sipping coffee in the peaceful silence of my own space, I smile. I smile because the locks they changed don't matter. I have my own locks now. I smile because the house they tried to keep is sold, and half the money is mine. And I smile because that message meant to break me became the final proof of their betrayal. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who think they know you best. They assume you'll always be the person they've conditioned you to be. Compliant, giving, easy to manipulate. But people grow, people learn, and sometimes people fight back. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to toxic family members. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to take legal action against a family who tried to use you? What was your breaking point? Your stories help others realize they're not alone in these situations.